Marvel has released all 8 episodes of Wonder Man, and I have seen them all. Let's discuss. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new, my name is Jay, welcome on in. As I said in the intro, Wonder Man has got all 8 episodes now available on Disney+. This is my non-spoiler review. As always, spoilers can be subjective, so if you don't want to know anything at all, then save the video to your watch later playlist and come back later. But otherwise, let's discuss Wonder Man. So talking about the structure of Wonder Man, first of all, it's got 8 episodes, but they were all released on the same day, which for me at least sent alarm bells ringing, because when Marvel's done it in the past, they've typically done it to just get the show out there so that people can binge it as they please, and so that Marvel can then move on to another project and kind of just let it go quietly. The filming for the show started in April of 2023. It's been on the shelf for a long time, and so it didn't really surprise me that they did apparently just want to get it out there. It was created in that time where quantity was created over quality, and this is kind of just something that's been stuck there for a while, and they're finally getting around to releasing it. But I can happily say that I thoroughly enjoyed Wonder Man, and I'm going to go into the reasons why. To be honest, I don't actually think this series would work on a week-to-week release schedule. I think it would probably struggle to retain a general audience if those individual episodes were viewed in isolation. We've seen that with Ironheart and Secret Invasion, where, to be honest, the shows just kind of felt like a really long movie that's had to have these cuts put into it so that they can make them into separate episodes. And sometimes that's the issue you have when you design a TV show for streaming. We're in that era now where they're not being designed for network television. I will say that there's been instances, primarily because of showrunner Jack Schaefer in her shows WandaVision and Agatha All Along, where that wasn't the case, and you can really handpick and remember certain episodes that happened in those series from memory, that they were really distinct in their own right. Some people have said that Wonder Man is the best show on Disney Plus from Marvel, and I would disagree there. It's just some of the comments and the reviews that I've been seeing online, but I would say that at the moment, for me, I still have WandaVision and Loki in that S tier, but Wonder Man is certainly in contention for being just the next tier down in the A tier, probably alongside shows like Hawkeye and potential. I was going to say Miss Marvel. I would put Hawkeye in that A tier, probably. Yeah, probably Miss Marvel as well. Of course, one of the first things you see when you press play on season 1, episode 1 of Wonder Man is that, well, you see the Marvel television banner, but then you also see the Marvel Spotlight banner, which I believe means that this show works on its own. You don't have to have seen anything else in the MCU or have any prior knowledge of Marvel. And that's another thing where when I saw that, I was like, uh-oh. The only other show that I believe has used that is Echo, and that certainly did not entertain me. And while this show is very different and separate to anything that Marvel's ever done, I think that actually works for the better. And even then, fans are given lots of connections and Easter eggs that connect to other things that they'll be familiar with in the MCU if they have seen it, including a little mention of Rogers the Musical. We see mentions of existing heroes, and of course, we also have the returning character of Trevor Slattery, played by Ben Kingsley. As much as I do love Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who played the protagonist Wonder Man, aka Simon Williams, I really do think that Trevor, played by Ben Kingsley, was the standout of the series, who really just entertained me from the first moment that he appeared on screen. There's lots of references to his past with repeated questions to him asking, wait, aren't you the Mandarin? And it becomes a bit of a running joke, but his past and previous appearances actually play a critical role in his arc of the show. There's lots of callbacks to Iron Man 3 and even the All Hail the King one-shot that was released, showing a clear continuation of his story. But even if you've not seen any of that, it doesn't matter, because it's actually all shown to you in the series, and it doesn't feel like exposition that needs to happen. It all fits flawlessly into the narrative, so no viewer is going to be lost in this either. I will say that the way that they leave Trevor in the final episode, I think, is a fitting end for his character, but it does leave me curious as to whether he's going to appear in the MCU again. I would love to see him, but the place where they finish his story in Wonder Man just has me a little curious as to how they would make that work, but time will tell. I don't want to skip past Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, obviously, playing our protagonist Simon Williams, because he was also a delight to have in the show. I think he was perfectly cast. I did think when I first saw him in that first episode that we'd have another situation similar to Riri Williams in Ironheart, where the character wasn't maybe going to be very likable, but that did change by the end of the series. I really felt for him and I understood his situation. I think that pairing him with Trevor in the show was probably the smartest decision that anyone even made on the show, because they just might be the best buddy cop duo that Marvel Studios has ever created and put in one of their projects. They were fantastic together. Jokes were also plentiful throughout Wonder Man. There's one line in particular where they're talking about remaking the fictional movie of Wonder Man in the show, and the director goes, "Oh, a superhero remake. That's not really what you would expect from an Oscar-winning director," which I just think is a hilarious commentary on how Marvel films and superhero films in general are not always perceived to be the finest art that can win awards. But my favourite line actually, and it's not too much of a spoiler because it doesn't give away any plot details, but it's a little reference to Megan 3.0, and it's quite funny because I think that was probably put in there at a time where that franchise had some hope. So yeah, that was good. Overall though, Wonder Man is just a love letter to the film industry, and if you love that particular industry, then you're going to be rewarded, because there are name drops of actors and actresses and performers, directors, TV shows, movies, you name it. There's so many things that have just been canonized to exist within the MCU. The Department of Damage Control, or DODC, also returns in Wonder Man. We've seen them before in Miss Marvel and in Spider-Man No Way Home, as we have seen one of its employees, Agent Cleary. He serves the role as a villain, I suppose, but he doesn't really evolve into anything more sinister than we've seen in his previous appearances, and to be honest, that is okay. Wonder Man is not all about having this big evil villain that they need to take down, and actually Agent Cleary works more to add to the comedy of the show. I did laugh several times at some of his dialogue. It all seems pretty deliberate. There does not need to be a massive antagonist for this story. It's very much a joyful show. I mentioned at the start of the review that episodes maybe didn't work to be distinct in their own right, but episode 4 totally refutes that point. It's titled Doorman, and it was definitely the standout episode for me of the whole series. Doorman actually stops the main plot, and it lets us go back and answer some of the questions and teasers that we got in those first 3 episodes. If you remember WandaVision, which I also mentioned in this review, that 4th episode did exactly the same thing, where we stopped the narrative, we went back, and we got shown things from a different perspective. Wonder Man's 4th episode does a very similar thing, where we get a standalone story, or that's at least what it appears to be, and then we realise why it's filtered in, or why it's been deliberately placed at the point it's been put in the story. So there's a reason why we stopped, why we told that story, and how that then affects everything going after. It gives some much needed context. I love the story that the 4th episode told, and I didn't finish it thinking, oh, that was a bit of a waste of time. I really wanted to continue with the main timeline. Quite the opposite, in fact. And there's a moment where there's a company mentioned, or their logo is printed somewhere on screen, and the events that happen around that might just help to canonize previous Marvel shows that were made well before the Disney Plus era. I'm talking Cloak and Dagger, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Agent Carter. It doesn't canonize them outright. Marvel could just say, no, we're maybe following the same stories that they had, but that doesn't mean everything we made was real. But it definitely helps. I was really glad to see a bit of continuation there. When I finished the show's 8th and final episode, that really solidified to me how grounded that Wonder Man really is. It doesn't finish in some big CGI fight and action sequence that Marvel has been criticized for over and over again, even when they don't always do that and they are doing different things. But nevertheless, the same argument can't be applied here, because it's totally on its own. Simon Williams does have powers, that's no secret. You've seen it in the trailers, but that's not the focus, and I really would recommend that you check the series out, whether you're a Marvel fan or whether you're not, especially if you're a fan of the film and TV industry. As I said earlier, I think you've got a lot to enjoy from this show. In terms of an overall rating then, I'd probably give it 4 out of 5 stars. It might just be a bit of recency bias, which is quite common for me, so it could drop down to 3.5, but no lower than that, and to be honest, I can't see it happening. Wonder Man was an absolute joy to watch and a pleasant surprise. It was not too far up my MCU predictions list in terms of what I'm most excited for, but yeah, it did a really good job, and I'm happy that I watched it. That's all for now though. That's all I've got to say about Marvel's Wonder Man. If you liked the video, then please give the video a like, hit the button. But more importantly, please subscribe, hit the bell as well so you're notified when I post a new video. I've got lots more coming out and I would love if you joined me on the channel. That is everything and I will see you next time. Bye.